once again for allowing us to live in a free country. And, we think of the terrorist attacks 22 years ago on this day, and pray that you be with the families that are still grieving the lost people. And also we pray that you help us make wise decisions tonight and learn the township. In Jesus' name, amen.
Where's the flag going?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you all remain standing for a minute, let's have a moment of silence for the people of 9/11. Thank you, and remember what they stood for. All right, let's get right to it. Brad Benson, County Commissioner.
Thanks, sir. Nice to be with you this evening as we ease into fall. So, first item I have for you is not necessarily a county commission item. However, as a county commissioner, I sit on a three-county community action agency board. I'm the commissioner representative to that body. And we run Head Start programs, community action agency that is. We run Head Start programs in 2 of the 3 counties. We don't do them in Lenawee. Lenawee has another organization that runs Head Start, Great Start Readiness over there. But we do in Jackson and Hillsdale counties. And just want to bring your attention because it does fall into one of the districts, particularly the North Adams School District. You're shaking your head, so we have suffered in Head Start programs, just like everybody else has, with lack of employees. And we have 6 classrooms in Jackson County and 1 classroom in Hillsdale County that are shut down for no other reason. We have a waiting list of students to get into those programs, but we don't have enough staff to run. And so we have 1 classroom shut down. That classroom is at Camden Frontier, which is actually the school district that I live in down in Woodbridge Township. But I did want to bring it to your attention. We did have some discussion at our board meeting. We meet as a board once a month. And we did have some discussion that the North Adams classroom, relatively low enrollment this year. And again, I'm seeing some confirmation from head shaking here. So there is some discussion of the possibility that that classroom, that they may actually combine that with a classroom in Jackson. And so those students would then be transported to that classroom there. And then that staff that helps run that classroom, that would help us staff up the other classroom within the county, and we could get that classroom. So my message to you all that live in the North Adams School District, if you have children or grandchildren who might be applicable to that Head Start program, we can get that enrollment built up. We can keep that classroom there. So just spread the word on that. And so you probably will hear about the decision faster than I will. Like I say, that board member, we only meet once a month, but I did want to bring it to your attention that at least there is some discussion about that. In our meeting tomorrow, we are going to receive title. We're going to pass a resolution to receive title to a piece of property over in Litchfield in their industrial park. A few years ago, when we hired a consulting engineer in regards to the future of public safety radio in Hillsdale County, they identified that we will need to build a new tower over in the Litchfield area. We actually have a tower there in the industrial park. We don't own the property underneath it, and that tower is not tall enough and suitable for radio system expansion. So we would have to build a new tower at that location. And the city of Litchfield has very graciously offered us 3 acres directly off of Herring Road in their industrial park that will be ours. And so if we, in the future, if we are able to move forward with that public safety radio improvement project, we will have a piece of land there for it. So tomorrow, we've done our due diligence on that. We had the property surveyed, so we know legally where our boundaries are at and had it staked. We've also done an environmental study on that property. We just wanted to make sure, since it is next to the former power plant and the industrial park there. The sewage lagoons are reasonably close by. We just wanted to make sure we benchmarked that, if nothing else, so keep that clean on the study. And so tomorrow we will have, under our consent agenda, a resolution for the county to accept ownership of that piece of property. To that, we still don't have a clear path of how we are going to pay for an 800 megahertz system here in Hillsdale County. And it's very, very clear. We have two very historic now, 55, 60-year-old former radio communication tower, radio telephone tower that we inherited from Frontier Communication, the one in Osseo, the one in Camden. We actually just had them inspected. They did pass the inspection. We were kind of crossing our fingers on that, hoping they would. And they did pass the inspection. They have to do that every 3 years by the FCC. But they did at least say that for another 3 years they're good to go. But the equipment on them, it's becoming more and more difficult to communicate. So I'm looking for some feedback from you, my constituents, if we should perhaps go back to next year in 2024, put that issue back on ballot. We'll have to rebid that project, get current numbers. When I say rebid it, we will definitely go with a Motorola system, which is a state system, and not get into the issues that they found over in Branch County. We're trying to patch and make it work with hybrid system. So, but we'll have to get some updated numbers so we know how much that would be. But like I say, I really would like to hear from you if that is the path we take. There really isn't any grant money. We've tried for earmarks within the state budget. State's still awash in a lot of money. However, as I've been pointed out by several different people, Hillsdale County's got the wrong zip code right now with the current makeup of the legislature to be recipients of any earmarks in the budget. So, but we will, moving forward, at some point that system we have right now is going to fail. We're going to have to replace it, so the sooner we can get to work on that. Number one, the lower the cost will be, because it costs more than it did a year ago, and it will cost more a year from now. So please reach out to me on that. Tomorrow we are going to have a discussion of the 2024 County Commissioners budget, because interestingly we have a 5-member board, and so that means if we have 3 of us in one place, we have a quorum of the Board of Commissioners. So what we do in our budgeting process within a county government, all the department heads, elected and appointed, they submit budgets to our budget committee and to our finance director, and then we have interviews with them. So the chair and the vice chair, Commissioner Langer and Commissioner Engels, along with our finance chair, sit down with those department heads, go through their budgets, and basically make a presentation and try to sell the idea of why they need the dollars that they have requested in the budget. Unfortunately, we can't do that, because if we have the chair or myself as vice chair of the Board of Commissioners, either one of us were to go and meet with the budget committee, we would have a quorum of the Board of Commissioners. So we are actually going to have that discussion tomorrow in our open session Board of Commissioners meeting. Highlight to that is we have made a request within our budget this year. We did it also last year for a half-time position. Back in 2010, the Board of Commissioners had a full-time employee, and that individual left county government. And in 2010, we were in the depths of the Great Recession, and we elected not to refill that position. It was never refilled. It was kept in the budget through 2014 and then dropped out of there. So what we're looking at with the idea is one of the things that's come out of our last, in 2017, strategic planning meeting, and also we are going through that process again. It's been 5 years since we've done that. We really need to have, because we're a company of about 130 full-time and close to 200 part-timers, and we have no HR department whatsoever in county government. So our thought is that position would be as an HR person, and they would also do some requisite services for the Board of Commissioners, because we really have no staff for the Board of Commissioners when they weren't involved in HR functions. So that will be an interesting discussion. Hopefully we can get that funded. I spoke to you several months ago how we were applying for a community corrections grant, and that's simply that community corrections would fill that space between the time a person is arrested and enters into the circuit court, so basically the high criminal court or felony court system, and supervise them up until the point where that individual was adjudicated. There was either that they pled to a crime, they were tried by a jury of their peers or bench trial with a judge, and then were sentenced. Up until the point of sentencing, they are the responsibility of the county, and so what this will do is it will provide supervision for those individuals as they move through that process. And the thought is that if we can start that and perhaps get them off into drug counseling and regular drug testing, employment counseling, try to get them a job, that hopefully we can, rather than sentence them to prison, which is very expensive and breaks up families and as a general rule doesn't always have the most positive incomes, we could perhaps try and have more of a probation type aspect once they were sentenced, if they are convicted, and we can keep them here in the community and try to get them back to be productive members of society. So this is being funded by the Department of Corrections, and so we actually have a public body called the Community Corrections Board, and so we were successful in that grant, and we will have our first meeting since we have received our funding, and that will be on September the 20th. It is open to the public because we are a public body. It meets at 5 p.m. and will be up in the Circuit Court courtroom and the historic courthouse, so we'll make sure the doors are open because we do close our doors at 5 p.m. now to the public, but doors will be open that evening, so that if you were interested in attending that, this will really kind of be a kickoff of what we're going to be able to do, who we're going to be able to hire, and we'll continue to keep you informed on that as that process moves forward. Another thing that if you have not paid attention to in the MPA magazine, there are 4 bills in the legislature in regards to revising the state sanitary code. And currently in Michigan, if you have a septic tank, there is no requirement under state law for you to have regular and full inspections of that. There is no requirements whatsoever that you maintain it, pump it, whatever, and there's no requirements a change of ownership. Now, some local units of government, as part of the building codes, they do require inspections, so it does happen in certain places. On a statewide level, that does not happen. And so there have been bills introduced in the past that would, like many states, require every 5 years that you would have to have a certified inspector come out and inspect your septic system. And if there was a problem with it, you would have to fix it. If you did not fix it or unable to fix it, because sometimes that's very, very expensive, you could potentially have your house condemned by the health department. And so we see that there's potential that this could be very problematic, especially for our lower income and senior population, who might not have $22,000 or $24,000 flying around to pay for updating with a modern engineered septic system. So we're having some discussion. A number of the other county boards of commissioners have taken positions in opposition to that. And so we're having some discussion at the Hilton County Board of Commissioners whether we should as well go on record. We're a rural county with a relatively economic disadvantaged population, and definitely would be a hardship on a number of the residents of our county. So I do have the bill numbers written down. They are House Bill 4479 and 4480, and Senate Bill 299 and Senate Bill 300. So that might be something that you wanted to look at as a township board and go on record whether opposed or supportive of that, and also then reach out to Representative Fink and Senator Bellino and go on record with them as well. Same thing with members of the public. So, and I will report to you if we do take a formal position on that. The last item that I have for you is about 2 years ago, I asked for you to again return me back to the Board of Commissioners. Commissioner terms are 2 years. And we will have to run for election again in 2024. So we've started that process. I do have my petitions, and if you would be interested in signing those petitions of support, I would be very, very honored to have you do that. I will be here for a little bit before I have to run off to ransom, but I will also bring you back next month, so that if you wanted to do that, or give me a call, and I will find you someplace and make sure that you can get that done for me. I really do appreciate that. It will be interesting because the legislature, they've now changed our terms to 4 years. So we will line up, same as township officials, same with the rest of the countywide, and we will be off of that calendar like the State House of Representatives and the U.S. House of Representatives, where every 2 years we have to stand in front of you and say, hey, we're still doing our job. And if we're doing our job effectively, hopefully you'll send this back for another term. So there'll be a little bit longer starting in 2025. Those will then, people will serve for 4 years through 2029. And that'll get me up to 7. So if you all honor me with returning back to the Board of Commissioners, I will have to scratch my head and think about that, anything beyond that point. So that concludes my report for the evening. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to answer your question.
I actually have one, if you
Yes,
don't
sir.
mind. So you stated that the CAA, because of staffing, is potentially looking at pulling out North Adams and going back to Jackson.
Yep.
Has there been any talk about pulling out of Jackson and bringing into North Adams?
Have not heard that conversation at all.
Let me offer you.
Sell me that
Let
idea.
me sell you this idea. CAA, Head Start program at Little Rams are great feeder programs to this community. So even though we're talking 4 or 5 students that would potentially be displaced up into Jackson, we're talking 4 or 5 students who eventually would become kindergartners. So I would really love, as you as a board member, to offer the idea of what if we came back here to North Adams for that one classroom. And I'm sure the school, because I'm sure the school would be willing to work on that if it's a money issue. We can probably work through that because those 4 or 5 students are huge
Yeah.
into our kindergarten classrooms. So seeing more of our students move into bigger districts and be sucked into bigger districts is only going to hurt our area. So just food for thought.
That's a great idea.
Love to be part of that conversation.
Okay, very, very good. I have your card, and I'll pass it along to Toby's staff. And so thank you. Like I say, that's a fantastic idea, and I would be delighted to advocate for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question on
Yes.
same topics. You say Camden shut down the CAA?
They have what? They have 2 classrooms here. So they've got a modular building, and they've got 2 classrooms in that. And one of those 2 classrooms is shut down. That's the one that
And
counts.
CAA doesn't offer transportation,
We do have buses, so
but do they transport?
yeah.
And how many workers does it take to fill a classroom?
I believe it takes like 3, and perhaps you might be a little better.
We have 2.
Okay, 2. Okay, because I know you have a teacher. Teacher has to have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education, and there is a waiver program where you can be working on that. You don't have to yet have completed that credential, but you have to be working on it. And then there's a classroom A. So I wasn't sure if there was 1 or 2 classroom A's.
We had 3 and we put 1.
Okay, so normally they would rush to 3. And I just think of occasionally, as Brad's clients, because they have refrigerators for their milk and things like that, occasionally we'll be in those classrooms fixing a refrigerator. So, and I was thinking they had 3, but so 2 makes sense, especially with smaller. I don't know what the ratio. There may be a number where if you're above certain number of students, you have to have a second aid in the classroom. So
Gail has.
I just had a comment about the septics.
yes.
I don't know about the 5 years, but anybody that sells their home, they should have to have it inspected. I'll tell you about Jerry and Jay. This lady saved every cent to buy this home. Never had anything checked. She didn't know she was a single woman. And then she went in and right away the septic failed. And they went over to pump it and she was just crying and crying because she had no money to put in a new one. So I really think, and I know it sounds bad because you're septic. No, it's not. It's to save the people. So they really, when they sell it, they should have to have their well and septic inspected. But I don't know about the 5-year thing. I don't know.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I do know a lot of the banks and everything are requiring inspection, septic inspection,
Right.
before they get the money.
Right. And that would be true, going right back to that probably anybody who doesn't spend a couple $100 on a certified home inspector, go through the place and give them a report, and, do that same due diligence on, anything from the electrical entrance to the furnace. I mean, any of those other big ticket things. The question becomes, is that something we want government to tell us to do, or we as informed consumers be the ones to make the decision? And I will always lean on the side of that probably something that we as individuals should do and not have the governing entities telling us.
I know you know Lake Leanne had to get their tank pumped every 4 years, or they can't get a permit to put their boat on the water.
Right.
So, I mean.
That's why I didn't set up.
I don't know, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think I think it should be up to each individual township and that,
Right, and townships do have, local units of government do have the opportunity, some health departments have requirements. We do not do that in our 3 county health department. Anyone else?
I'd like to hear an update on where we stand exactly financially on the courthouse, what the costs are, and if there's any proposed beyond an already agreed upon price.
So in our last meeting, I think it was the 22nd of August, we did approve a change order of up to $500,000. I believe that brings us up to about $11,500,000. I would have to go back and double check my notes on that, Mark, to be certain. But we're about at that point. Of that, about $8 million of it is being paid for with American Recovery Plan dollars. We did take some of the additional, the $8.8 million that we received in our funds. We did use some of those to upgrade the heating and cooling out at the Friends of the Court building. We've done a couple other smaller projects, but about $8 million that. We are going to be borrowing from the building inspection fund about $2 million, which we can do that with interdepartmental or interfund loans. That pool of money is kind of interesting in that it can only be used for, we can't put it in the general fund, so we can't just transfer it and use it. It has to be used for building inspection related. So we pay salaries out of that fund. We buy the vehicles for the building inspection department whenever they need, because they have great big plotters for doing prints and things like very expensive equipment. We use those dollars in that fund. But we've got a pretty good accumulation, about $2.5 million, I believe, from what I'm hearing from our budget. So we could borrow $2 million from it and not hurt that fund at all. And so that will be where we will be making it up. We did a very similar thing with the county office building. So basically they came back, the Renaissance, the contractor in the building, they wanted a very broad, from a $500,000 to $1 million change order. We said we don't have an additional $1 million. And so the other component of that is in that initial bid that we approved, just like any bid, there's a 10% contingency, and we haven't eaten significantly into that 10%. So initially it was a $10 million project, so there's $1 million contingency. We haven't eaten significantly into that. So between the money that we just approved and the contingency, at least at this point, the discussion might be that we may have to stop with the roof line. I brought that point up previously, and the counterpoint to that is we have a very expensive scaffolding system on the outside of that. That scaffolding is hundreds of thousands of dollars in rental fees and rigging. And so we don't want to have to come back. One of the questions I asked is can you do that with a skylift? The stuff that's below the eaves, and the contractor was kind of like, we really work with those big blocks of stone. We don't know that would be the best manner of doing that. But we may, very honestly, if we run out, because the well is dry, we have no additional dollar. I mean, there are other borrowing, but you got to pay it back. So the good news is Hillsdale County, we don't have a lot of debt. The bad news is we don't really have income where we would be going out. I mean, I'd like to have a new truck. My truck's got 277,000 miles on it. It's a 2010, and I'd like to have a new truck, but they're about $60,000, and Brass Appliance doesn't make enough money to make a $1,000 truck payment. So same deal with the county. We have to live within our means. So did that answer your question?
Quite sufficiently, are your intentions right now from the first roof up to do everything that needs? Because
Yeah,
certainly
yeah,
that
right.
would cost the most
Yeah.
for scaffolding.
Yeah, 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 that basically would be the break point, is that we'll come down, we'll do the new eaves troughs, because those eaves troughs are like a foot wide, and they're all fabricated out of copper. So we'll definitely be able to get that far, and then we'll have to see, and all the windows will be done too, that's part of the project.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Klein.
Thank you for having me. We hired an administrative assistant, and she's been putting on Facebook, the Hillsville County Road Commission's Facebook page that people can follow and find out where we're chip sealing. It'll also be on the radio. We've got 50 miles of chip seal projects this year. Peterson Road has been chip sealed, it still needs the fog, and I'm sure there'll probably be at Lake Bel Air this week, weather permitting. As of 8/24, we had 10,000 yards of gravel made, which we're going to use. The drain commissioner has been made the project manager for the M99 closure. And they hope to get it done by snow flies, but I wouldn't bet on it. We're gonna do some brush spraying in Camden, Reading, Cambria, and Woodbridge Township. I haven't heard of anything in Adams Township. If I do, I will notify whoever, or you can listen on the radio. And if you don't want it sprayed, all you gotta do is contact the road commission and they'll try to not spray it. Deberming is to be done after chip seal up until it freezes. We're gonna try to get as much deberming done on the gravel roads as we can this year. It doesn't mean we're not gonna not deberm anymore, but we're gonna try to get as much as we can done. Guess that's about all I got on there. Now, the big thing I wanna talk about is the battle over the brine. Eagles back. What they're proposing is additional sampling of mineral brine testing whenever a storage tank is filled. During bridge work, no detours within 100 feet of bodies of standing water or ditches. Brine used along the road would require application stop and starts within 1/10 of a mile of standing water areas. Below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, no mineral brine can be used to de-ice on bridges. And snowplow drivers would be required to document and record 13 data points for each segment of the road when brining. And maintain 14 days of brine application logs in each truck. I don't need to tell you what that's gonna do to the cost of brining. And they haven't said that they're gonna eliminate brine, but they are proposing to cut the rate back per mile. Now, back in April, the County Road Association, the Michigan Township Association, the Michigan Association of Counties all got together and drafted a letter and sent it to Eagle. And then they did away with their proposed April 1st implementation. Now they're doing work studies with these organizations. And they're starting that this month. And I guess I would ask if this board would draft a letter of some kind and send it to the Townships Association in support of keeping the brine regulations as they are. At last Saturday's Hillsdale County Farm Bureau annual meeting, we drafted a resolution in support of keeping the brine regulations as they are. And that resolution will be sent to the State Farm Bureau at their meeting in December to be adopted as a state resolution of Hillsdale County Farm Bureau. It's just something more bureaucracy. And I guess if we all work together, hopefully we could just the amount per mile. They wanna cut it back, and then they want some kind of documentation by drivers and chlorine or chloride companies and all that of how much brine they're using. The brine has to be tested. Each tank full, you know, these are all, this brine's all pulled out of wells. It's not,
What kind of damage do you think this brine's doing?
well, right here, this is the County Road Association magazine I got just this month. Which, let's see, according to MDEGLE, brine may be making its way into groundwater at potentially high levels. But no data or scientific evidence of this has ever been presented.
Oh my.
That's the head scratcher.
Now,
So it might be making its way.
Well, I think, from what, this is what the County Road Association says, that the county road agencies are hoping to understand what problem MDEGLE is trying to solve. I would, you know, as I said, I would ask that you please draft a letter and send it to your Townships Association as a support of the County Road Associations and MDOT and, well, even the chloride industry that supplies chloride to the road commissions and MDOT. You know, they're even in on this too, because it could potentially be a cost to them, you know. I mean, if they, like when they brine the roads here, their drivers would have to have a logbook that they'd have to have for 14 days. And they'd have to record, you know, where they stopped, where they started. And it's just another bureaucratic nightmare, is what it is. So I would ask that you please help us out. Other than that, that's about all I've got. Anybody got any questions?
on the brining, that doesn't just do dust control, that's road stabilization as well, am I correct?
Correct.
So if they-
That's bind the gravel roads together.
If they cut back on this, how much deterioration in the roads might we see because of that?
They would first have to tell us how much they are going to cut back. Right now, we put on about 1,500 gallons a month. And they're pretty cautious about it. I mean, in years past, yes, I've seen it where the road would be wet and they'd come out and put the brine on. Well, it doesn't soak in. Now this year being how it's so dry, that brine was gone immediately. But they're pretty cautious now. They don't try to, and I've seen years past where they put so much brine on, it was running into the ditch.
So in your estimation, that scenario, runoff, might be more of a problem than any soaking down?
Correct. But they're not, the equipment that they have now that they're brining with, we don't see those problems. Now, MDOT uses a lot of brine for snow and ice control. Most all the trucks on the state highways have tanks where they put brine right onto the salt. And I know Lenawee County uses sand, majority of on their roads, and they have their own brine wells, and they treat the sand with brine. So when it comes out of the truck, it's wet. Well, they found that by using brine, they actually wind up and use less salt, because the brine goes to work on the ice quicker. This is something that Eagle is trying to push on us, needless to say. Other than that, anybody else got any concerns?
Is there some kind of mixture that has to be?
Yes, it has to be, the brine has to be tested that we use now. It has to have a certain chloride content. And it can't have any oil in it. Where years ago, they pulled it right out of the They're the main supplier in this area. I'm not certain where their wells are.
What is the reason behind that, that an official also with the department requests something like that? Does it come like out of the blue or what is behind it?
That we haven't found out.
I'm very interested.
I know.
Who is behind it? Eagle?
Eagle.
And they are subsection of the DNR.
Yeah, they're their own animal.
Right.
They're the Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy
Right.
is what they stand for.
I know that they have given us continuous power.
You know?
So,
Anything that has to do with water in the state of Michigan, they are
and that counts for they want it for the whole state of Michigan.
correct.
And you say at the moment every county handles this matter with the brine in their own way, in a safe way.
Yeah, the county road commissions in the state of Michigan that use brine, not all use brine, but the vast majority of them do. And there's standards that they go by.
Right.
If we, like I said, I think we put 1,500 gallons a mile of brine, which that's an accepted standard for dust and road stabilization. And if you cut the rate back, you're gonna have more dust, and your road isn't gonna hold together as good.
Mark, you say you're gonna seal coat yet this year, you have seal coating still to do?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And just curious, is there any plan to do line painting?
Yes.
I had a question today
Yes.
about that, so.
Yes. They have to put chip seal down first and get it set. Then they come back and put what they call a fog seal on, which is overlay. Once that's set, then they come back and paint lines on it. We've already started painting some roads in the county already that are, where either in need of painting or that we've gotten done, that they've been set long enough that they can put the paint to them.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm still interested. Do they intend to charge for the testing of that material?
No, that would be up to either the supplier of the brine. Well, that's not really been set in stone, so I can't say that for sure. That's one thing we're trying to find out is who's actually supposed to keep the records and get the permits and all this stuff. Is it going to be the road commission? Is it going to be like Corrigan Oil? And then do we have to send drivers to get training to make sure that they keep these records? And do we have to put some kind of electronic log in the truck that we have to buy to record this? Like when they're putting on salt brine for ice and snow control? I mean, we do have trucks that have on the salters that are, they're not computerized, but they're very similar to the same thing that farmers use in that. They're like a Dickie John monitor, and you set them for so many pounds of salt to the mile, and that's what the truck puts on. These are the in-box salters, not the ones you see the guys running around with their box up there, because we're trying to get rid of them. Those
I
are,
still don't get it. I still don't get it. That there are people, do they have a scientific background that they come up with
they
a
haven't,
regulation which they want?
they haven't come up with a scientific reasoning
Yeah,
yet why they want to do this. It's like they produced a problem, now they're trying to find a cure for it. That's basically what I got out of this article.
bureaucracy.
Any other questions, concerns? Your roads are all great?
I see the mowing, got a lot of mowing done.
Well,
Township.
Yeah, we're getting there, but we had more breakdown and we're trying to get as much done as we can. All right,
Ross,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on, public comment. Keep your comments to 3 minutes, address them to the board, do not argue or bicker amongst yourselves, and be respectful. 3 minutes. Who's gonna be first? Public comment. Stephanie.
Thank you guys again. For today, or for this evening, I'd like to read you an excerpt from the August 25th, 2023 Bureau of Elections Update newsletter. And this one's entitled Technology Development for Early Voting. Bureau of Elections is currently developing an early voting tool to be utilized for all jurisdictions starting in the 2024 presidential primary election. This tool is similar in several ways to the current electronic poll book used on election day, but is being updated to include the necessary elements to run an efficient and effective early voting site. So early voting again is the 9 days that passed. Bullet point 1, live connectivity. This connection will be in real time, allowing for ballot and other information needed for early voting to be exchanged via secure connection between the qualified voter file and the early voting tool. This will transmit ballot activity, record voter history, and update records if a voter's eligibility has changed. Bullet point 2, real-time updates. The early voting tool will record and transmit ballot activity back and forth between the qualified voter file and the early voting tool, removing the need for a download/upload during the early voting period and eliminating the need to call the clerk for voters with a pending AV ballot or to connect to other early voting sites. The current download-upload process and online functionality will continue to be used for the election day electronic poll book. Number 3, which actually about 4, I'm going to skip number 3 because it's related to the expanded region management. Ballot on demand recording. For jurisdictions utilizing the ballot on demand, that's the one that prints out as we go in, or go into the county site that's going to be talked about tonight. The early voting tool will allow for the recording of these non-standard ballot types to accurately reflect voter history. Although this new web-based tool involves real-time connection and expanded region management, it can function on the same type of machine typically used on the election day EPV. The machine utilized would have proper security protocols, allow for multiple USB ports and for a YubiKey and other approved devices, and shall not be used for other purposes similar to the requirements for the election poll book. With the functionality updates of this tool, reliable internet connectivity is important to ensure information is being transmitted as needed to update voter files. To help mitigate unreliable internet connectivity, hotspots are recommended, and the Bureau is currently exploring options to help local jurisdictions expand availability and the reliability of internet connections. I know you guys are going to vote tonight to consolidate the county. That vote, I'd just like to say for the record, is a systematic dismantling of decentralized government in Michigan. We fought this fight in 2020 here. Those tabulators, the electronic poll books, they're online, and Bureau just admitted it. You guys want to ignore it, they just put it in their newsletter. If anybody wants to read the newsletter, here it is. Went out to all township, municipal, and county clerks. Thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing none, moving on. To the approval of August 14th, 2023 board minutes. You all received a copy of the board minutes. Are there any changes in the board minutes? No?
Pass one from the
Do what?
pass one you put in yes instead of yes. That would be.
Okay, fine. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion to accept.
I motion.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes of August 14th, 2023. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thanks. Moving on to new business. Review and resolution to create an early voting county precinct. I'll turn that to you.
Okay. The Hillsdale County Election Commission on August 14th instituted a resolution to create the early voting precinct. That precinct will be in the courthouse in the room to the side of the clerk's office. That's been all approved. From that, we now have the agreement between all the different townships who have agreed for their election services to be there. Pretty much all the clerks have agreed to the early voting. This will save the township a ton of money because we will not have to have full staff the 9 days early voting. What this is, you guys have all had a chance to look at this. What we're going to do is, what we need is a motion to allow me the privilege to sign this. So we will have one precinct for the early day. 9 days.
Do I have that motion?
I motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote on this.
I for Susie.
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Mr. Supervisor, can I say something, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
I actually brought the copy that I have never signed here, so that will be handy. I just want to remind everybody that this is in addition to the voting options you already have, voting in person on election day in your precinct, and voting locally with your municipal clerk with the absentee ballots. And I want to stress the fact that each day of early voting will have a site supervisor that is a municipal clerk with their election inspectors in the precinct running that precinct. So it will maintain that local piece, local control, because the county is not in the business of taking over elections, as some may accuse us of doing. Print, sign, date. And also, I wanted to just mention that, yes, the laptop will be connected to the internet. It'll have a direct connection to QDF, the qualified voter file. It will not be the qualified voter file, though, because it has to have special sign-ins with multi-factor authentication for just the inspectors to get into it. But it will communicate with the qualified voter file. And that's important because in early voting, now that we're stuck with this, which again, none of us wanted early voting to begin with, but now that we have it, it's important that we do it right and do it securely. And that includes having the ability to tell if someone comes into an early voting precinct and votes, and knowing if they voted absentee somewhere else. You have to have that connectivity so that you see that. But that is a new feature, and it is only for these special laptops that are only used for early voting. As always, the laptops that are used in the precinct are not connected to the internet. They get data that's downloaded on a secure flash drive the night before the election. So they will remain unconnected, as the tabulators have been and will remain unconnected to the internet. So I appreciate your time and your signature.
Is it allowed to have a question to this subject?
No. He wants to ask a question of can we can give him some legit.
If you're
3 minutes.
okay with it, yeah, with your permission. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now I'm just interested, how many days before the actual day of election is it early voting possible?
It will only be for state and federal elections, and it will be 9 days,
9 days.
starting 2 weekends before the election. That's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday right before the election. Then you have your Monday without anything other than absentee voting, and then Tuesday's election day is normal.
And you got 1 point. So there is a definite proof that there is no possibility of the early election person also doing absentee voting.
They won't be able to do that with the connectivity of that laptop that's in the early voting precinct, because it will tell if they have turned in an absent voter ballot that's already been voted. And then we will not allow them to vote in the early voting precinct at that point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Stephanie wants to ask you.
So what I'm hearing is that the electronic poll book is evolving for those 9 days. There is not an actual poll book list. It's something that's going to be changing because it's live connected.
It'll have a list of voters,
But it's changing.
but it is connected
because of what I just discussed.
But it's changing, because names will add in, names will subtract out, supposedly, as registration changes between precincts.
So the qualified voter file has always had that live piece that clerks can see when absent voters are voting. You receive the ballot, you record that as received in the qualified voter file. It records it when you send out the ballot, when you send out the application, when you receive the application. All that has already happened and been happening. This is to allow the election inspectors in an early voting precinct to know if a voter has voted absentee or not, and then to be able to look up what ballot style they need to get to be able to issue them a ballot. And then the other piece to this is the clerk then in the municipality that's still processing absentee ballots will be able to connect to the qualified voter file itself and see, oh, this person just voted in the precinct early voting, so now I can't receive in this absent ballot because they can't vote twice. So.
But just to clarify, it's working in QBF, so the group up here understands QBF is different from the electronic poll book. QBF is downloaded the night before the election, usually at 4 p.m., and that's the poll book that out here uses. And what this is doing is creating 9 days of an evolving poll book, which isn't a poll book, it's just QBF, changing around and around, and then you're saying 4 o'clock the print in the poll book will be for normal election day. So basically there's no poll book for those 9 days, it's just the state database that.
I've answered your question, I think, sufficiently.
So the clarification. Good job.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna move on. Treasurer's report.
As presented.
Motion made, accept as presented. Give me a second.
I second.
Motion made, seconded to pay the bill. Treasurer's report. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Bills. As you're looking at the bills, you'll see a couple of spots where it looks like an extremely large amount of money. Limestone for Hillsborough County Road, which was a lot of money. And also, you'll see on page 2, for Cambridge and Company PLC, $6,100. That's part of the 2021-2022 audit cost of $10,150. Those are the two main ones that are outstanding. I don't see anything else. I'll entertain a motion to pay the bills.
I motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to pay the bills. All in favor? All opposed? Clerk notes.
Quick notes. With the new early voting, we have already got a date that we will be there, and I've already talked to some of the staff. The other thing is, part of the AV system is that now has a return envelope that already has the postage on it. We have gotten a bar scanner because that will scan all of these. It'll have, and then we will reimburse, because the county pays so much, we still don't know the exact because we're getting money from the state for these. Other than that, I have contacted DMCI. They have not come out and clarified yet how much we must retain of the video as far as the ballot boxes because of the early day voting. So Robert's gonna come out Wednesday afternoon and we're gonna go over that. And that's about it.
I have no supervisor notes. Let's open it up for second public comment. Remember again, 3 minutes, and address the board. Do not address each other. Be respectful. Yes.
Linda Tyler, and I have a question as to the legality of this meeting tonight. You presented us with an agenda,
Yeah.
but there was no motion to approve or accept, and there was no vote to accept the agenda tonight. So I'm asking whether this is a legal meeting.
I would assume yes. Motion for the agenda. I don't know, honestly.
I have no idea. I mean, it's an agenda, it's a plan, it doesn't mean that things change.
You
I
have
mean,
to-
certainly by the public comment alone, we have a lot of changes.
I think you need to study that. And
Sure.
I see.
Are votes legal? Illegal?
I don't know.
Mark, any comment?
I believe you're supposed to approve an agenda and stick to it. You shouldn't do business that's not on the agenda, not take a vote. That's my opinion.
You know, I appreciate that, and, I don't know. I guess I'll have to check. Was never presented with this problem yet, so
No.
let's figure it out.
Well, this is the first time I've seen it not, where an agenda has not been approved by the board when they start. Or an amendment made to an agenda to either take something off or add to. That's part of your proper procedures that you need to learn, adopt, because in my opinion, this was an illegal meeting.
Maybe it's not too
It's
late
just
to
fine.
approve.
Can it be approved at any time?
See why not? We haven't adjourned yet.
Well, there's a law. I think you need to look up the law. It's not just a free for all around here. And if I remember correctly, but don't quote me, 48 hours prior to. But it does need to be approved.
I'll motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second.
Okay, well, there is a motion and a second for approval of the agenda, even though it is late in the day.
Yeah.
We will have to check on legality on this for off the bat, and in the meantime, motion is made and seconded about the agenda, all in favor of approving the agenda at this late day? Aye. I will check on it. Okay. Who's up? Got a public comment?
I'll do one more. Of course. Live connectivity. It's in the newsletter, you guys. He's talking about a whole nother program, and I don't know if you guys understand the significance of decentralized elections. Deferring this all under the county is the next step to a one-state centralized election. What I'm not sure the rest of the board, maybe you do by this point, Susie, I know I didn't a few months into it. This is 2 years into this for me. I've been studying and reading the law. No, it's my turn. There is the qualified voter file. This is the online software that supposedly is keeping track of everybody's jurisdiction and supposedly the vote history. There's plenty of evidence to show it's not keeping it, or at least the state is not using QDF. But that is something that the clerks can look at live at all times and see who's supposedly in the precinct. I'll just say who's in the precinct. In previous elections at 4 o'clock on the night before the election, that data for this township was downloaded onto a USB stick, and that's provided to the workers at the table so they know who the state says is eligible to vote. Now we have this unconstitutional voting in place, which is nobody's fault in the room, But now we have 9 days of everything happening in QBF with zero visibility. As a clerk, it's your legal obligation to make sure legal voters are in your township. You have no control when it's running out here in QBF. And if it is gonna run the same and then you're gonna download the night before at 4, there's the poll book list. And that's what I was trying to get to with Abe. There is a poll book list that is printed from or downloaded, and then it could be printed, but it's not. It's downloaded onto the laptops over here. It's who's eligible. Now we've got 9 days of God only knows what's happening. Who's gonna look? Who's gonna see? Who's gonna actually validate that the people that voted 9 days prior are ones that were eligible in our township? You guys have all just deferred it to the county. We're one step away from state running our elections. And it's one thing to not understand it, but what I don't understand is why people don't want to try to understand it. Can't be just yes men. Our country is hanging. And if we're gonna trust the people that are elected, we have to trust the elections. And I guarantee what you did tonight was not a good thing. I get it why you're doing it. Saves money, saves a whole bunch of work, saves a whole bunch of work finding election inspectors. I get it. But you were bought out. You guys just sold out Adams Township. Thank you.
Yes, Gail.
Susie, will you promise not to give all of our information to a Mr. Cotton to another state?
I absolutely promise I won't be releasing any of our personal information.
Thank you.
Because you will see it.
All right, anybody else? Ms. Roberts?
I think you're doing a fine job.
Thank you, Janet.
Talking about trusting our elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing a fine job.
Thank you. And I think Abe gave a very good definition.
Anybody else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.